I think we can all agree that the institution of marriage is one of the most central, vital, crucial institutions of society that help us with success in life. I think we can also agree that the Bible, the Torah, is intended to be an instruction manual for life, for human life. If so, question is, why is the Torah so silent on marriage, on married life? You'd think you'd have at least a couple of chapters in there with some wisdom, some advice, some guidelines, some commandments, right? But instead, all we have is a brief story, only one brief short story in this week's parsha about a wedding that takes place. And from this little story, apparently, we're supposed to learn everything there is to know about married life. So what is this story exactly? The story comes when our patriarch Yaakov, Jacob, is back in Haran at his relative's house, and he falls in love with Rachel, with Rachel, who the Torah describes as very attractive, and he has great love for her. It says when he first saw her, he lifted his eyes when he saw her and cried, right? What does it say about her sister, though? She has a sister, an older sister named Leah. Leah's eyes are swollen because she had been crying. And Jacob is obviously very attracted to Rachel and wants her hand in marriage, but her father says that he must work for her hand, and that's 7 years. What does the story go on to say? Well, he works for 7 years, comes the wedding night. The bride is veiled, and when he comes home and he marries his bride, and who he thinks is Rachel, but after they unveil her, he realizes that he has been deceived, he's been conned, and now he's married to Leah. So he goes back, he works another 7 years for Rachel's hand, and now he ends up married to both sisters. Okay, one whom he chose, one whom he loved, and the other that he ended up just, she's the undesirable one. But he makes room for her in his household. What do we later learn? We later learn that the future of Israel comes from who? Rachel or Leah? Okay. The children, Rachel had a hard time bearing children. She has Yosef, she has Joseph, whose kids, Menashe and Ephraim, ultimately become lost to history. And she has Benjamin, who is such a small, kind of insignificant tribe that he ends up blending into a larger Leah tribe named Judah, Yehuda. Okay, so basically, Rachel becomes insignificant in the larger scheme of things. But Leah, from Leah come the greatest prophets of Israel, the greatest kings, the greatest tribe, Yehuda, Judah, where today's Jews are descendants from, and ultimately the messianic line comes from Leah, the Redeemer of the world. Okay, so this is the story in this week's parsha. Question is, what does this have to do with married life? What does this tell us about marriage? It's the only marriage story, the only wedding story in the entire Torah. So what does it teach us? So the key to unlock the understanding of this story is in the oral tradition. It gives us the keys, the understanding, and what it says is that Rachel and Leah represent the two aspects of every marriage. Anyone in the world who's going to get married is going to have the Rachel dimension and the Leah dimension. The Rachel dimension is the reason you get married. You lift up your eyes, you see this person, and you cry. Your heart wants nothing else in the world. Rachel represents what we choose. On a mystical level, she represents free will, what we're choosing ourselves. Leah represents the ultimate destiny, but she also represents the unanticipated aspect of marriage. So in every marriage, there's the reason you're getting married, what you're choosing, and then after the fact, meaning after the wedding, you realize there's a whole other aspect of marriage that you find yourself thinking, man, I don't recall signing up for this part, right? It's the undesirable part. It's a part that requires a lot of work. Leah, remember, her eyes were swollen with tears. Represents a lot of challenges, a lot of struggle, hard work, right? Now, what does this tell us further about marriage and how to be successful in marriage? Is that if you notice in this story, Jacob, as much as he loved Rachel and as much as he did not sign up for Leah, he ends up keeping her around. He could run away, he could escape, he could divorce her, he could throw her out of the house, abandon her, but instead he makes room for her in his life. He includes her as part of his household. She becomes part of the family, part of his reality, part of his personal life, and ultimately the destiny of his descendants. Lesson 1, always make room for the Leah aspect of your marriage. There'll definitely be some surprises after the wedding night. There will be a lot of hard work. There will be some times of struggle. But if you allow Leah to be part of the household, you not only have a chance of success, but your greatest destiny awaits you through this aspect of the relationship. The next thing we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you 2 photos of a wedding, the ring ceremony part of the wedding. And one of them will be a non-Jewish wedding, and the other will be from a traditional Jewish wedding. And I want you to guess which is the Jewish one and which is the non-religious or the non-Jewish one. Exhibit A shows the ring ceremony being put on the ring finger. Exhibit B shows the ring being placed on the forefinger, or what they call the index finger. If you chose Exhibit B as being the traditional way of getting married, you are correct. During a Jewish ceremony, the ring is placed on the right hand, the index finger of the right hand, and only after the ceremony does the bride then change it, switch it over to her left hand, wearing it on her ring finger. And the symbolism is very rich and directly related to what we just learned in the Torah. You see, my index finger, especially on the dominant right hand, is a symbol of power, control, choice, ambition, direction. This is the finger that represents my free will. This finger is me choosing, me calling the shots. It's my sense of control. But my ring finger, especially on my left hand, represents the opposite. Since it's the least significant, least used, weakest finger on my weakest hand, it basically does nothing of my choosing, nothing of my own control. It represents something much larger and more powerful choosing for me. It is my acknowledgement that I have a destiny with this person I am marrying. I have a predefined life path, and it's my job to do everything I could to accommodate this higher reality. Up until the wedding ceremony, both my bride and I are choosing each other. This is the Jacob-Rachel aspect. But after the ceremony, I acknowledge that while I was the one choosing, heaven also has a say in it all. In fact, it's heaven choosing us to be together. And this is the Jacob-Leah aspect of the marriage. Finally, where does God fit into all of this? Before us is God's name in Hebrew, which is read from right to left. So it's Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Our sages teach that every time a man and woman get married through the ring ceremony, God is signing his name through the actions of the ritual. We look at the smallest letter Yud, which represents the ring. Then we look at the longest letter Vav, which represents the index finger. And we are left with two Heys. Hey equals the number 5. We have 5 fingers on each hand. The two Heys represent the 2 hands necessary to get married. The groom's hand, which gives, and the bride's hand, which receives. Thus, the ring ceremony itself is the signing of God into one's marriage. And this is our final lesson. For a marriage to be successful, do not alienate his presence from your household. Hashem, our Creator, is the spiritual glue and substance that is holding the entire thing together. Just as we don't want to push away Leah from the relationship, representing the unanticipated hard work that marriage requires, you don't want to push away God by having a divisive household. The Shekhinah, or divine presence, rests where there is peace and harmony between husband and wife. Shalom Bayit. On this note, I wish everyone the best. Marriage is a holy institution. Life itself is sacred and should be treated as such. Have a good week.